Look at it, suspended in a sunbeam, a mote of dust. That is what we are, a fleeting, precious anomaly turning slowly in the unending dark. From here, from this impossible vantage point, all our noise fades. Our triumphs and our tragedies, our wars and our art, all of it. It all vanishes into the silent, overwhelming beauty of this sphere of liquid water, of swirling cloud, of continents, of green and gold. This is not just a planet. It is a living thing, a singular breathing organism in a cosmos that is profoundly, terrifyingly sterile. Every river carving its path to the sea a vein, every forest breathing oxygen into the sky a lung, every tectonic plate shifting beneath our feet, a slow geological heartbeat. You are living inside a miracle, a cosmic improbability of the highest order, a delicate 4.5 billion-year-old experiment in life. And for all of human history, we have looked away from it. We have turned our eyes from the ground beneath our feet to the lights in the night sky, those pinpricks of diamond scattered across the velvet black. We called them the heavens, the home of gods, the realm of eternity. And we told ourselves a story, a powerful, seductive story that has defined our species. The story that this perfect blue world is not our final home, that it is merely a cradle, a nursery from which we are destined to emerge. A starting line for a race to the stars we were born to run. It is our grandest, most cherished myth, the myth of our cosmic destiny. We see it in our oldest tales, in gods descending from starry chariots. We see it in our modern fictions of starships charting unknown galaxies. The narrative is always the same. Humanity, clever and brave, facing a challenge here at home. A dying planet, a looming catastrophe, or simply the call of the unknown. And so we build our arks, our silver ships, our generation vessels. We cast off from the shores of Earth, our one and only home. We sail out across the black, silent ocean of interstellar space, and we find new worlds, new gardens, new beginnings. It is a beautiful dream, perhaps the most beautiful dream we have ever had. It speaks to everything we admire about ourselves, our courage, our ingenuity, our unquenchable thirst for exploration. The idea that no frontier is final, that no barrier can contain the human spirit, that we are not merely creatures of Earth, but citizens of the cosmos, that one day our descendants will look up at a sky full of alien stars, and they will call that place home. This dream has launched 1,000 missions. It has put footprints on the moon and rovers on the red plains of Mars. It has fueled the minds of our greatest thinkers and inspired generations. It is the ultimate solution, the final escape hatch for a species that has always been a little too clever for its own good, a species that has always been a little too hard on its planetary home. But what if this story, our most foundational myth, is a lie? What if it is a profound and dangerous misunderstanding of our place in the universe? What if the heavens we have yearned for are not a welcoming frontier? What if they are in fact an eternal and impassable barrier? What if Earth is not a cradle we are meant to leave? What if it is a fortress, a sanctuary, a gilded cage, a paradise we can never, ever escape? This is the story of that cage. The story of the invisible walls that surround our world. Walls built not of stone or steel, but of physics, of biology, of time itself. This is the story of why our destiny is not written in the stars, but here on the surface of this one fragile, irreplaceable world. This is why we will never leave Earth. To understand the bars of our cosmic prison, we must first appreciate its scale. We talk of the vastness of space, but the words are inadequate. They are pale ghosts unable to capture the sheer mind-breaking emptiness. Let us try to see it, to truly feel it. Imagine yourself stepping outside this world, beyond our protective atmosphere. the first thing you feel is not wonder. It is violence. A violence of extremes that your body was never designed to withstand. The sunlight unfiltered by our sky is a blast of pure, sterilizing radiation. It is a torrent of high-energy particles that shreds delicate organic molecules. It burns, it poisons, it destroys the very blueprint of life. Then you slip into shadow. The temperature plummets instantly to hundreds of degrees below freezing. A cold so absolute it makes molecules crawl to a near standstill. A cold that would freeze the breath in your lungs into crystalline dust. And then there is the vacuum, not just emptiness, but a perfect and aggressive nothingness. It pulls the air from your body with explosive force. It makes the fluids in your eyes and on your tongue boil at body temperature. There is no medium to carry sound. The silence is total, a profound, deafening silence that is the true sound of the universe. This is the environment just a few hundred miles above your head. This is the immediate backyard of our terrestrial home. It is a death zone. We have, of course, built machines to survive it. Pressurized suits and metallic habitats, our little bubbles of Earth. We have learned to carry our air, our water, our warmth with us. We wrap ourselves in layers of metal and technology to fend off the abyss. And with these tools, we have taken our first tentative steps. We have reached our own moon, a monumental achievement for our species. It is 250,000 miles away, a 3-day journey in our fastest ships. It feels like a great distance, a true voyage into the unknown. But on a cosmic map, this journey is almost nothing. If the Earth were the size of a single grain of sand held in your palm, the moon would be another tiny speck of dust just an inch away. It is a trip across our own front porch. Now, let us consider our next great ambition, Mars. The red planet, our neighbor in the solar system. At its closest, Mars is over 140 times farther than the moon. A journey not of days, but of 7 to 9 grueling months. One way. On our scale of sand, where Earth and Moon are an inch apart, Mars is a distant fleck of red dust nearly 12 feet away. The journey to Mars is not a trip across the porch. It is a journey across the street through a neighborhood filled with perils. For 9 months, astronauts would be trapped in a tiny metal can. They would be relentlessly bombarded by those same solar particles, and by something far worse, galactic cosmic rays. The shrapnel of distant exploding stars, supernovae from across the galaxy. These are atomic nuclei stripped of their electrons and accelerated to near light speed. They are nature's own particle accelerators firing celestial bullets. They tear through the hull of a spacecraft like it is paper. They rip through human tissue, shattering DNA strands, increasing cancer risk. They damage brain cells, leading to cognitive decline and memory loss. We have no meaningful way to shield against them. On Earth, we are protected by 2 things. Our planet's powerful magnetic field, which deflects this cosmic fusillade, and the thick blanket of our atmosphere, which absorbs what gets through. We live at the bottom of an atmospheric ocean shielded from the storm. In interplanetary space, that protection is gone. You are naked. You are exposed. Every moment of that 9-month journey, your body is being slowly, methodically poisoned. Your very code for life is being rewritten by the universe itself. And should you survive this ordeal, you arrive at Mars, a world that is by every measure a global planet-sized cataclysm. It is a frozen, desiccated desert bathed in lethal ultraviolet radiation. Its atmosphere is a wisp less than 1% the density of Earth's. It offers no protection from the cosmic rays you endured on your journey. It is so thin that liquid water cannot exist on the surface. It boils away instantly. The soil is laced with toxic perchlorates. The dust is as fine as smoke. It is a world that has been dead or dying for 3 billion years. To live there would require a feat of engineering beyond anything we have ever conceived. It would mean living inside pressurized habitats forever, never feeling the wind on your face, never breathing the air, never touching the soil with your bare hands. You would be a prisoner of your own technology, a permanent exile. Your life would be a constant, unending battle against a world that wants you dead. Every single breath, every sip of water, every calorie of food, it would all have to be manufactured, recycled, and maintained, with no room for error, ever. A single catastrophic failure, a cracked seal, a failed power system, and it would all be over in minutes. And this frozen, irradiated, toxic wasteland, this is the most Earth-like, most hospitable, most accessible planet we know of. This is our primary target, our best-case scenario for a second home. Every other world in our solar system is a deeper circle of hell. Venus with its crushing atmosphere and surface hot enough to melt lead. Jupiter, a titanic ball of gas with no surface to stand on its radiation belts, 1,000 times more intense than anything near Earth. The moons of the outer planets, worlds of frozen methane and nitrogen ice. Our own solar system, our celestial home, is a graveyard of failed worlds. It is a collection of exquisitely hostile environments, and we are living in the one and only garden it has ever produced. But the dream does not stop at Mars. The true dream is interstellar. The dream is to reach for other suns, for other Earths. The dream is to find a true new beginning among the stars. This is where the walls of our cage become truly apparent. This is where the numbers become so large they lose all meaning. This is where the laws of physics cease to be guidelines and become absolute, unbreakable statutes of cosmic law. Let us consider our nearest stellar neighbor, Proxima Centauri, a small, dim, red dwarf star. It is just over 4 light-years away. A light-year is the distance light travels in 1 year. Light, the fastest thing in the universe. It moves at an astonishing 1.86000 miles per second. Even at that impossible speed, it takes light over 4 years to cross the gap. The gap between our sun and the very next one over. That distance is 25 trillion miles, 25,000 billion miles. Our fastest spacecraft, the Parker Solar Probe, reached a peak speed of over 400,000 miles per hour, an incredible velocity, a testament to our engineering prowess. At that speed, a speed at which you could circle the Earth in under 4 minutes, it would take over 6,000 years to reach Proxima Centauri. 6,000 years. Human civilization from the first cities of Mesopotamia to the digital age is roughly 6,000 years old. A journey that would span our entire recorded history, just to reach the star next door. The energy required to accelerate a ship to even a fraction of light speed is equally mind-boggling, dwarfing the total energy consumption of our entire civilization. And then there is the problem of slowing down at the other end. You would need to expend just as much energy again, and the journey itself would be through a shooting gallery. Interstellar space is not empty. It is filled with microscopic grains of dust and ice. When your ship is moving at 10 or 20% of the speed of light, colliding with a particle the size of a grain of sand releases the energy equivalent of a powerful bomb. The ship would be sandblasted into oblivion long before it arrived. So we imagine generation ships, vast self-sustaining worlds in miniature coasting through the dark. Generations would be born, live their entire lives, and die on this vessel. Their children's children's children would be the ones to finally see their destination. But what would that do to the human mind, to human society, to live your entire life inside a machine knowing you will never arrive, knowing your only purpose is to be a link in a chain, a biological placeholder in a multi-millennial voyage? Could any social structure withstand such a strain? Could any semblance of sanity survive? And what is the prize at the end of this impossible journey? We have found a planet around Proxima Centauri, Proxima b. It orbits in the star's habitable zone where liquid water could exist. A tantalizing prospect, a potential new Earth. But its star is a volatile red dwarf. It regularly blasts its planets with stellar flares and extreme radiation. Flares so powerful they would strip away any atmosphere. Flares that would sterilize the surface, boiling any oceans that might form. Proxima b is likely a tidally locked, scorched and frozen rock, a world blasted by its own sun, even more hostile than Mars. Our nearest hope is a cosmic non-starter. This is the pattern we are beginning to see across the galaxy. The universe is not filled with copies of Earth. The conditions that created our world are astonishingly rare. You need the right kind of star, a stable, long-lived yellow dwarf like our Sunday, not too hot, not too cold, not too violent. You need to be in the right part of the galaxy, the galactic habitable zone. Not too close to the chaotic, radiation-blasted core, not too far out in the sparse, heavy element, poor suburbs. You need the right kind of planet, a rocky world of the right size, large enough to hold on to an atmosphere and a molten core to generate a magnetic field, small enough that its gravity isn't crushing. You need a large moon like ours to stabilize your planet's axial tilt. Without our moon, Earth seasons would swing into wild, life-extinguishing extremes. You need a gas giant like Jupiter in the outer solar system, a cosmic bouncer to eject comets and asteroids that would otherwise cause constant, devastating impacts. You need the right amount of water delivered at the right time. You need the miracle of plate tectonics to regulate the climate and recycle carbon. The list of requirements goes on and on. Each one is a roll of the cosmic dice. The chances of all these conditions aligning in one place are almost beyond calculation. We have dreamed of a galaxy teeming with Earth-like planets, but the reality is likely far more stark. The universe may be filled with worlds, billions upon billions of them. But the vast majority are likely to be gas giants, frozen ice balls, or barren superheated rocks. The number of true life-sustaining Earth-like gardens may be so vanishingly small that the distance between them is for all practical purposes infinite. We may be fundamentally, irrevocably alone. This realization changes everything. It shatters our most cherished narrative of escape and expansion. It forces us to confront a truth that is both terrifying and profound. The universe is not our inheritance. It is not our playground. It is a vast, indifferent, and exquisitely lethal arena, and we are not its destined masters. We are a fragile biological event confined to a single miraculous oasis, an oasis that we are rapidly, systematically poisoning. Our dream of escaping to the stars has always been a comforting distraction. It allows us to believe that Earth is disposable, that if we break this world, it is all right because we can always go and find another. This belief is the ultimate moral hazard. It absolves us of responsibility for the consequences of our actions here and now. It allows us to treat our planet not as a precious finite home, but as a temporary resource to be plundered before we move on. But there is nowhere to move on to. There is no planet B. There is no interstellar cavalry coming to save us. There is no grand cosmic destiny waiting for us among the stars. There is only this thin, delicate membrane of life, this biosphere clinging to a rock hurtling through an unforgiving void. This is our ship. It is our only ship, and its life support systems are beginning to fail, and it is our own fault. The challenges we face, climate change, biodiversity, loss, resource depletion, are immense, complex, and frightening. But they are solvable. They are problems on a human scale. They require us to use the same ingenuity and courage we dreamed of using to conquer the stars, and instead use it to save ourselves right here. The physics of interstellar travel is merciless and absolute. The physics of our own climate is complex, but it is not our enemy. It is a system we have broken and one we can learn to mend. To abandon the dream of leaving Earth is not an act of despair. It is an act of profound maturity. It is the moment a child realizes they must care for their own home, because there is nowhere else to go. It is the moment we stop looking for a fantasy escape and turn to face the reality of our magnificent, singular, and imperiled world. It requires a fundamental shift in our perspective, a shift from seeing ourselves as conquerors of the cosmos to seeing ourselves as guardians of a rare and precious jewel. Look at it one last time. See the electric tracery of city lights on the night side. See the emerald green of the rainforests, the planet's lungs. See the deep, impossible blue of the Pacific, the cradle of life. Everything we are, everything we have ever been is on that sphere. Every song, every poem, every act of love, every moment of discovery. It is the only home we will ever know, and the journey to save it is the greatest, most important exploration we will ever undertake. The stars will have to wait. They will have to wait forever, because our future is not out there in the cold and silent dark. It is down here. Before there were names for the continents, before we drew maps of our own world, we mapped the one above. You carry this inheritance within you. It is the instinct to look up on a clear, moonless night, away from the glare of civilization, to feel the sheer, silent, overwhelming immensity of the dark. That quiet awe is a thread that connects you directly to the very first human consciousness, to the first mind that recognized patterns in the scattered diamonds of the night sky. For our most distant ancestors, the heavens were not an empty vacuum. They were alive. The sky was the first great storybook, its pages turning with the seasons. It was a canvas for our gods, our monsters, our heroes, and our deepest fears. Constellations were not just random assortments of light. They were signposts, calendars, and divine actors in a cosmic drama. That slow, predictable wheel of stars was the only permanence in a life of constant peril. It was the assurance that after the brutal winter the sun would climb high once more, that after the hunt there was a way to find home. The sky was a place, a destination. The Egyptians saw their departed pharaohs sailing across it in barges of light. The Norsemen heard their gods thundering across the Bifrost Bridge to Asgard. The Greeks placed their greatest champions among the stars as a final, eternal reward. To ascend to the heavens was the ultimate apotheosis. The dream of leaving Earth is not a modern invention. It is perhaps our oldest, most fundamental myth. The aspiration was woven into the fabric of our souls long before we had the language of science to describe it. But then a profound shift began, a revolution not of swords and empires, but of perception. Slowly, painstakingly, we began to translate the poetry of the sky into the grammar of physics. A few courageous minds dared to look up, not with reverence, but with relentless curiosity. They saw that the wandering lights, the planets, were not divine beings. They were worlds. The moon was not a goddess or a silver coin. It was a place of mountains and valleys, a sphere of rock and dust hanging in the void. A place you could in theory stand upon. With that single staggering realization, the universe cracked open. The celestial ceiling of myth was shattered, revealing a void of incomprehensible scale. And in that shattering, a new dream was born. Not of ascending to a heavenly paradise, but of voyaging to a physical shore. Earth was no longer the center of all creation. It was a small, fragile island in an infinite cosmic ocean. Our home, yes, but for the first time we could conceive of it as a starting point, a cradle from which humanity was destined to one day emerge. This idea ignited the imagination. Writers and artists, the advanced scouts of human ambition, began to chart these new imaginary seas. They envisioned cannons powerful enough to shoot men to the moon. They dreamed of bizarre civilizations on the crimson soil of Mars. They spun tales of voyages powered by celestial storms and exotic energies. These were fantasies, of course, glorious, impossible fictions, but they performed a vital function. They kept the spark of the dream alive, passing it like a torch from one generation to the next. They transformed an abstract astronomical concept into a visceral human longing, a yearning to set foot on another world, to see our own planet rise in an alien sky. But how? How do you leave an island when you have no boat? How do you build a ladder to the moon? The abyss between the dream and the reality seemed absolute. Gravity, the very force that gives us weight and form, was our benevolent captor. It held us fast, an anchor chaining our entire species to the surface of this one world. To break that chain required not just a new machine, but a new kind of thinking. It required a force of unimaginable power precisely controlled, a continuous directed explosion. The answer would come not from the esteemed halls of established science. It would emerge from the mind of a reclusive, deafened schoolteacher in a provincial Russian town. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky never built a rocket. He barely published his work in his own lifetime. But on paper, with the pure, elegant language of mathematics, he laid the entire foundation for our escape. He understood that to leave the Earth, you had to throw something away. You had to hurl mass in one direction to propel yourself in the other. He conceived of multi-stage rockets, of liquid fuels, of orbital mechanics, and he encapsulated the entire human journey in a single prophetic sentence. The Earth is the cradle of humanity, but one cannot live in a cradle forever. Tsiolkovsky was the prophet, but the dream needed a practitioner. It found one in the windswept fields of Massachusetts, in a quiet, unassuming physicist named Robert Goddard. He was a man possessed by a singular, unshakable vision from his youth. The vision of a machine that could climb the air and keep climbing. While the world dismissed his ideas as fanciful nonsense, he worked. He built, he experimented, he failed, over and over again. His early attempts were little more than glorified pipe bombs screeching and sputtering into the dirt. He was mocked in the press, scorned by his academic peers, a lunatic chasing an impossible fancy. But on a frigid day in March of 1926 inches, a snow-covered field history changed. A small, spindly metal contraption looking like nothing the world had ever seen hissed to life. It rose from the ground for 2.5 terrifying seconds to a height of 41 feet. It was a minuscule, almost pathetic flight, but it was everything. It was the first stuttering step off our world, the first time a human creation had freed itself from the earth, not with wings but with fire. Goddard had proven that the brutal calculus of escape was not just a theory. It was a practical, physical reality. The spark had been lit. Across the Atlantic in Germany, the idea took hold with fervent intensity. Amateur rocket clubs sprang up, filled with passionate engineers and visionaries. They saw not just a scientific curiosity, but a gateway to a new human era, a future of gleaming space stations, of lunar bases, of expeditions to Mars. They published journals, they built larger and more powerful engines. They were popularizing the dream, turning it from a fringe obsession into a plausible future. But their work, born of pure aspirational wonder, was about to be co-opted, swallowed by the darkest of human impulses. The terrifyingly efficient machinery of war recognized the rocket's ultimate potential. The dream of reaching the stars was twisted into the nightmare of delivering death from the sky. The V-2 rocket, the Vergeltungswaffe 2, was a weapon of indiscriminate terror. But it was also a technical marvel. It was the first man-made object to cross the Kármán line, the recognized boundary of space. A machine designed for destruction had accidentally, brutally become the first true spacecraft. From the ashes of a world war, two rival superpowers would salvage this terrible, brilliant technology. And in their bitter ideological struggle, they would inadvertently launch the greatest adventure in human history. The Cold War was a period of existential dread, of a world living under the constant shadow of annihilation. But this terror created a strange and powerful crucible. National pride, strategic advantage, and technological supremacy became paramount, and the vast empty arena of space became the ultimate proving ground, a cosmic stage on which two systems would compete for the future of humanity. The race was on. Then, on an October night in 1957, the sound of the future arrived. It was not a roar, but a simple repeating beep. Sputnik, a tiny polished sphere weighing less than a man circling the globe every 96 minutes. It was a new moon forged by human hands. That faint electronic pulse audible on radios across the planet was a profound declaration. It announced that the heavens were no longer inviolable, that the age-old barrier between Earth and the cosmos had been breached. For the first time in our history, we were not just looking at the sky, we were in it. The shockwave from that single event galvanized a nation. America, stunned and humiliated, poured its immense resources into catching up. The space race had begun in earnest. It was a frantic, desperate scramble, a high-stakes game of orbital chess. But it was also a period of breathtaking innovation. In a few short years, we went from 0 to 60 in the cosmos. We hurled probes to the Moon, to Venus, to Mars, getting our first crude, blurry glimpses of other worlds. We learned how to navigate the void, how to survive in a vacuum, how to shield our fragile biology from the relentless radiation of our own sun. But machines were not enough. The dream had always been human. It demanded a presence, a witness. On April 12, 1961, that moment arrived. A 27-year-old cosmonaut named Yuri Gagarin was strapped into a tiny capsule, perched atop a colossal, explosive pillar of controlled chemical fury. He was about to become the first human being to deliberately leave the world, to commit the profoundly unnatural act of severing his connection to the entire human story, to see with his own eyes what no poet, prophet, or astronomer had ever truly seen. The launch was a cataclysm of fire and sound, an agonizing compression of forces that threatened to tear man and machine apart. But then silence, weightlessness, and the view. Through a small porthole, Gagarin saw it, the gentle, impossible curve of the Earth, a breathtaking swirl of blue, white, and green suspended in a blackness more absolute than anything imaginable. "I see Earth. It is so beautiful," he radioed back. In that moment, he was not just a Soviet pilot. He was the emissary of our entire species, the first of our children to leave the cradle and look back. His single orbit changed our perspective forever. We were not inhabitants of a country or a continent. We were passengers on a stunningly beautiful, fragile sphere. The gauntlet had been thrown. The American response was a declaration of almost ludicrous audacity. President John F. Kennedy stood before his nation and made a promise to land a man on the moon and return him safely to the Earth, not because it was easy, but because it was hard. It was a goal so far beyond our existing capabilities that it seemed like science fiction. It would require the invention of entirely new fields of engineering, computing, and materials science. It would require the coordinated effort of 400,000 people, the largest mobilization of technological will for a peaceful purpose in history. The Apollo program was humanity's cathedral project, a testament to what we could achieve when driven by a singular, audacious vision. Every launch was a national prayer, every maneuver a moment of held breath. We watched the agonizing failures and the heart-stopping successes. We learned a new language, a lexicon of the heavens: trans-lunar injection, lunar orbit insertion, powered descent. We saw the grainy black and white images of the moon growing ever larger, transforming from a distant light into a vast cratered landscape, a new world waiting. And then came the day, July 20th, 1969. The world stopped. 1 billion people, a quarter of all humanity, were huddled around televisions and radios, listening to the crackling disembodied voices from 250,000 miles away. The Eagle, a fragile insect-like craft, was falling toward the lunar surface. Mission Control was a cathedral of hushed tension. Every soul on Earth was a passenger on that descent. Fuel was running dangerously low. Alarms were blaring. The landing site was a field of boulders. Then through the static came the words. The 7 words that fulfilled a dream thousands of years in the making. Houston Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. A wave of relief, of pure, unadulterated joy washed over the planet. We had done it. We were there. We were on the moon. The hours that followed felt like a waking dream. The hatch opened into the blackness. A ghostly white figure, bulky and inhuman in its protective suit, emerged. Slowly, carefully, it descended the ladder, and then a foot touched the grey, powdery dust. A single small step for a man, a giant leap for mankind. Those first bouncing steps on the lunar surface were a profound moment of arrival. This was not a myth. This was not a story. This was real. We were walking on another world, looking up at our own planet, a delicate blue and white marble hanging in the perpetual night. The sheer, stark, magnificent desolation of the moon was a mirror. It reflected back at us the precious, vibrant uniqueness of our own world. The Apollo missions were the greatest journeys of exploration ever undertaken, but their most important discovery was the one they left behind. They discovered the Earth. In the euphoric afterglow of Apollo, anything seemed possible. The future felt exhilaratingly close. We had done the impossible. What could possibly stop us now? The plans were drawn. Grand, ambitious blueprints for the next great phase. Vast rotating space stations that would be permanent outposts in orbit. A shuttle fleet that would make trips to space routine almost commonplace. A permanent base on the moon, a stepping stone into the deeper solar system. And then the ultimate prize, a human mission to Mars. It was not a question of if, but when. The 1,980 seconds would be the decade of the lunar colony. The 1,990 seconds, the decade of the first Martian expedition. The colonization of the solar system felt like our manifest destiny, an inevitable, unstoppable expansion of the human presence. This was the why. This was the culmination of the great yearning. It was driven by the purest engine of curiosity, the need to know what lies over the next hill. It was fueled by the restless spirit of exploration that had pushed us across every ocean and continent, to seek out new frontiers, to challenge the limits of our knowledge and our courage, to stand on a new world and simply be there. But another more urgent driver began to emerge, a deeper, more primal motivation. As we saw our world from the outside, we began to truly comprehend its fragility, that thin, shimmering veil of atmosphere, that delicate, miraculous film of life clinging to a rock in the void. We realized how finite our resources were, how vulnerable our ecosystem was. The Earth, our cradle, suddenly felt precarious. The idea of becoming a multi-planet species transformed from a romantic adventure into a practical necessity, an insurance policy, a way to ensure that the light of human consciousness would not be extinguished by a single planetary catastrophe, a stray asteroid, a runaway plague, a self-inflicted nuclear winter. The great emptiness of space, once a barrier, now looked like a lifeboat. Our survival, it seemed, depended on leaving home. The dream of spaceflight was no longer just about aspiration. It had become about preservation. Our destiny was written in the stars because it had to be. We had to go. We had no other choice. You are a creature of gravity. Every fiber of your being, every beat of your heart is a response to a world that pulls you down. Your skeleton is a masterpiece of compression engineering. Your muscles are cables of tension constantly fighting a fall. Your senses are calibrated to a planet of a specific size, spinning at a specific speed under a particular star. This is the contract your biology signed over millions of years. But out there in the silent, frictionless dark, that contract is broken. The fundamental agreement between life and its environment is voided, and the consequences are a quiet, creeping betrayal, a systematic dismantling of the human machine far more profound than we ever dared to imagine. It begins with a feeling of liberation, a deceptive euphoria, weightlessness, the dream of flight made real. You are unbound, floating free in a cathedral of technology. But this is no heaven. It is a vacuum of consequence, and your body, sensing this profound absence, begins a terrible retreat. It starts to dismantle itself piece by piece. Your bones are the first to register the new, terrifying reality. Here on Earth, they are not static structures, not mere scaffolding. They are a living, dynamic matrix, a bustling city of cells constantly breaking down old tissue and building it up again, stronger, denser, in response to the daily stress of existence. Every step you take, every object you lift is a command: be strong. In space, that command vanishes. There is only silence. The cells responsible for construction, the osteoblasts, fall idle. But the demolition crews, the osteoclasts, continue their work. They begin to dissolve your own skeleton from the inside out. It's a silent internal osteoporosis proceeding at an alarming pace, losing 1 to 2% of bone mass for every month spent in orbit. A year in space can inflict a decade of age-related bone decay. Your skeleton, the very frame that defines you, begins to soften. It leaches calcium into your bloodstream, a ghostly mineral tide flowing away from your core. This calcium doesn't just disappear. It clogs your kidneys, forming stones in the delicate filters of your body. You are haunted by the dust of your own dissolving architecture. The risk of a debilitating fracture upon returning to a gravity well, even our own, becomes a stark, unavoidable danger. Your bones forget what it means to bear a load. Then there is the quiet atrophy of your muscles. The powerful engines of your legs, designed to defy a planet, find they have nothing to push against. The intricate network of muscles in your back and neck, sculpted to hold your head high against a constant downward pull, are suddenly unemployed. They begin to wither. The body is brutally efficient. What is not used is a waste of resources, and so it begins to cannibalize its own strength. Astronauts must exercise for hours every single day, strapped to treadmills and resistance machines, not to get stronger, but in a desperate losing battle to simply slow the rate at which they are wasting away. They are running from a phantom that is already inside them. Even the heart, that tireless metronome of life, is not immune. Without the need to pump blood against the pull of gravity, it shrinks its walls, thinning. It becomes a less powerful version of itself. The body, in its misguided wisdom, is adapting to an environment that it was never meant to survive. But the assault is more insidious still. On Earth, gravity pulls all the fluids in your body downwards. In space, this anchor is gone. Blood and other fluids drift upwards into the chest and head. Your face becomes puffy, swollen, a distorted caricature. Your sinuses become perpetually congested. Your legs, meanwhile, shrink, becoming frail, stick-like appendages, earning the nickname chicken legs. This is more than a cosmetic inconvenience. It is a crisis of plumbing. Your brain, floating in a skull, now overfilled with fluid, struggles to recalibrate. Your sense of balance is shattered. The inner ear, a marvel of biological gyroscopes, is lost sending nonsensical signals that can induce a dizzying, debilitating nausea. And a new, more terrifying symptom has emerged. In recent years, a malady known as spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome. The increased pressure inside the skull begins to crush the optic nerve. It physically changes the shape of the eyeball itself. Vision becomes blurry. Astronauts who left Earth with perfect sight return needing glasses, their focus permanently altered. We do not yet know if this damage is reversible in the long term. We are discovering in real time that the human body is a delicate vessel tuned to a single fragile note in the cosmos. Change that note and the entire instrument begins to detune. The very code of life itself seems to falter. The immune system becomes dysregulated, confused. T cells, the soldiers of your internal defense force, become less effective, leaving you vulnerable. Dormant viruses like Epstein-Barr or chickenpox can reawaken from their slumber within your own cells, staging a revolt when the body's authority is weakened. You become a stranger in your own skin, a biological system slowly, methodically being taken apart by the absence of one single force. This is the price of a few months in low Earth orbit, protected within the cradle of our planet's magnetic field. This is the toll of the void in our own backyard. To venture further, to truly leave the nest, is to face an enemy far more violent and completely inescapable. Because beyond the shield of our world space is not empty. It is a shooting gallery, and you are the target. Out there is an invisible, unending storm of radiation. It is not the gentle warmth of our sun's light. It is a relentless hail of subatomic bullets, a shower of high-energy particles fired from the hearts of cosmic cataclysms that occurred millions of light-years away, long before humanity existed. This is a realm our biology has no reference for, no defense against. First, there are the sudden violent tantrums of our own star, solar particle events, eruptions of charged particles unleashed by the tangled magnetic fields of the sun. They are a dragon's breath of radiation, capable of delivering a potentially lethal dose in a matter of hours. A ship caught in open space would have to retreat to a heavily shielded storm cellar, a small cramped vault, and wait for the celestial fury to pass. But even this threat pales in comparison to the real menace, the one that never stops, the one that permeates all of interplanetary and interstellar space. They are called galactic cosmic rays, or GCRs. The name is deceptively simple, almost mundane. The reality is anything but. These are not mere particles. They are atomic nuclei, the shredded remnants of stars that died in supernova explosions. They are the iron, the nickel, the heavy elements from a star's core, stripped of their electrons and accelerated by galactic shock waves to velocities approaching the speed of light. They are atomic-scale cannonballs, subatomic shrapnel from detonations on a galactic scale. And they pass through nearly everything. Your spacesuit offers no protection. The hull of your spacecraft might as well be paper. These heavy ions don't just pass through you, they tear through you. When one of these particles strikes a cell in your body, it is a microscopic event of unimaginable violence. It smashes through the delicate double helix of your DNA, not making a clean cut that might be repaired, but causing a catastrophic fragmentation, a shattering of the code. The cell's own repair mechanisms are overwhelmed by the sheer destruction. It is like trying to reassemble a glass vase pulverized by a hammer. The damage is too complex, too widespread. The cell will either die or it may mutate its genetic instructions, now a garbled, corrupted mess. This is how cancer begins. Every moment spent in deep space is another spin of the roulette wheel, another ticket purchased in a cosmic lottery of cellular destruction. The longer the journey, the greater the exposure, and the higher the statistical certainty of a fatal malignancy developing. your own cells turned against you by an invisible assailant from a distant star. But cancer is only one of the known consequences. The delicate lenses of the eyes are particularly vulnerable, clouding over with radiation-induced cataracts. The central nervous system is also a prime target. We are only beginning to study the potential cognitive decline, the memory loss, the erosion of reasoning abilities that could result from years of the brain being peppered with these high-energy particles. An astronaut could arrive at Mars or a more distant destination not as a brilliant explorer, but as a shell of their former self, their mind subtly or perhaps profoundly degraded. So we build shields, thick layers of aluminum lead or other materials. But here we encounter a terrifying paradox. Against the sheer energy of galactic cosmic rays, our shields can become part of the weapon. When a heavy GCR ion smashes into a nucleus in the wall of your ship, it creates a secondary cascade of particles, a spray of neutrons and other radiation that can be even more biologically damaging than the original particle itself. The very armor you hide behind can be turned into a shotgun blast aimed directly at you. The solution becomes part of the problem. Water, rich in light hydrogen nuclei, seems to be a better shield. But imagine the walls of a spaceship several feet thick, filled with thousands upon thousands of gallons of water. The sheer mass, the impossible cost of lifting such a defense out of Earth's gravity, well becomes an engineering nightmare. We are trapped. Too fragile to go unprotected, too technologically limited to build the perfect shield. Our bodies are a soft target in a universe filled with ammunition. Let's imagine for a moment that we solve these problems. Imagine a miracle of medicine and engineering, a ship that perfectly shields its inhabitants, a therapy that completely negates the decay of bone and muscle. We have conquered the frailties of the human machine. We are now ready to leave our cradle. We are ready to go to the stars. Now we face the final and most absolute of all barriers, a wall built into the very fabric of space-time, the tyranny of distance. Our minds are not built to comprehend the scales we are now discussing. We think in terms of miles, of hours, of lifetimes. The universe does not. Let us try to build a new sense of scale. The moon is our closest celestial companion, 250,000 miles away. Apollo astronauts traveling on the most powerful rocket ever built took 3 days to get there. It is our celestial front porch. Mars, at its very closest approach to Earth, is over 30 million miles away. Our fastest robotic probes take 6 to 9 months to make that journey. One way, a round trip with time spent on the surface is a multi-year commitment, exposing a crew to all the hazards we have just described for an agonizingly long duration. And Mars is in our own solar system. It is our next-door neighbor. It is still, cosmically speaking, right here. The true prize, the dream that has fueled our ambitions for centuries, is the stars, a new sun, a new Earth. The nearest star system to our own is Alpha Centauri. Within it, a small, dim red dwarf star called Proxima Centauri is technically our closest stellar neighbor. It is 4.2 light-years away. A light-year is not a measure of time, it is a measure of distance. It is the distance light, the fastest thing in the universe, travels in 1 year. That distance is nearly 6 trillion miles. Proxima Centauri is therefore about 25 trillion miles away. The number is so large it becomes meaningless an abstraction. So let's translate it back into a language we can understand: time. The fastest object ever launched by humanity is the Parker Solar Probe. At its peak velocity, screaming past the sun, it reaches over 400,000 miles per hour. If we could somehow aim that probe at Proxima Centauri and maintain that incredible speed, the journey would take approximately 6,600 years. Voyager 1, which has been traveling away from us for decades, would take over 75,000 years to cover that distance. A voyage not of years but of dynasties, a journey of civilizations. This is the reality of interstellar travel with our current technology. It is not a matter of a few years. It is an endeavor that spans the entire recorded history of human civilization and then some. But what if we could go faster? What if we could approach the ultimate speed limit of the cosmos, the speed of light? Albert Einstein revealed that this is not just a benchmark, but a fundamental law, an unbreakable cosmic statute. Nothing with mass can reach it, let alone exceed it. But let's dream. Let's imagine a ship that could travel at 99% of the speed of light. A fantasy of physics. The journey to Proxima Centauri would still take over 4 years. And that is just one way. Imagine the crew. They leave Earth, hurtling into the black. 4 years pass for them, perhaps a little less due to time dilation. They arrive at a new world. What do they find? How do they report back? A simple radio message traveling at the speed of light would take 4.2 years to reach mission control. A single question, how are? You would have to wait 8.5 years for its reply. A conversation would not be measured in seconds but in decades. This is not a communication gap. This is a chasm of causality, a severing of connection. The explorers would be utterly, completely on their own, more isolated than any human being has ever been in history. They would see Earth not as it is, but as it was years in the past, a ghost in their telescope. The news they received from home would be ancient history. The people they left behind, their friends, their families, would age and live their lives in the silent gap of the ship's journey. And this is the nearest star. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, is 100,000 light-years across. To cross it, even at the speed of light, would take 100,000 years. A timescale that makes the evolution of our own species look brief. The light from the stars on the far side of our galaxy that reaches your eye tonight began its journey when Homo sapiens were first migrating out of Africa. The galaxy is not an empire to be conquered. It is an ocean of time so vast that our lives are less than a single drop. And so we are faced with the grand delusion of interstellar colonization, the idea that we can pack our bags and move humanity to another star. The most common proposal is the generation ship, a self-contained world in a bottle coasting through the void for centuries or millennia, with generations born living and dying on the voyage. It is a romantic notion and a logistical, biological, and psychological impossibility. Imagine trying to build a perfectly closed, perfectly stable ecosystem that can function without fail for 1,000 years. Every drop of water recycled, every breath of air scrubbed, every nutrient reclaimed. A single uncorrectable blight in the crops, a single resilient microbe in the water systems, and the entire enterprise collapses into a tomb. It is an attempt to create a second Earth in miniature, a task we are spectacularly failing to manage on the original. And what of the people the first generation chooses to go? But their children do not, nor do their grandchildren. Generations would be born into a prison, a metal tube lost in the dark with no concept of an open sky, a gentle rain, or a vast ocean. Their only reality would be the ship, their only destiny, the journey. What would such a society become? What pressures, what neuroses, what forms of social collapse would emerge over centuries of confinement? We are creatures of a planet shaped by its horizons and its seasons. To deny that for 1,000 years is an experiment too cruel to contemplate. Leaving Earth is not a matter of building a better engine. It is not the next logical step like crossing an ocean or climbing a mountain. It is a fundamental confrontation with our own limitations, a battle against our biology which is designed for this world and no other, a battle against physics whose speed limits lock us into our own stellar backyard, and a battle against time itself which stretches distances into eternities. The heavens are beautiful. They inspire us, they fill us with wonder. The stars beckon with the promise of infinite worlds, infinite possibilities. But we may be profoundly mistaken about the nature of that call. The universe is not waiting for us. It is not our inheritance. It is a realm of such magnificent, violent, and indifferent scale that our existence within it is a fragile and perhaps unrepeatable miracle. The stars may be sirens luring us not to a new home, but to an eternal, silent, and lonely oblivion. We thought we could bottle a planet, that we could take a piece of our world, seal it in glass, and command it to live. It was perhaps the most audacious act of hubris in modern science, born from a dream as old as humanity itself, to build a second Eden. This grand experiment began not in the vacuum of space, but under the searing sun of the Arizona desert. It was called Biosphere 2, a 3-acre self-contained replica of Earth, our Biosphere 1, a crystal palace of interlocked domes and pyramids rising from the dust. Inside this hermetically sealed kingdom we placed our best hopes. We engineered a miniature world, a rainforest lush and humid dripped with manufactured mist, a savanna grassland rolled under the filtered sunlight. We built a mangrove swamp, a coastal fog desert, and even a private million-gallon ocean complete with its own coral reef. This was to be a planetary vivarium, a lifeboat for humanity, a working prototype for a colony on Mars or the Moon. 8 pioneers, the Biospherians, sealed the airlock behind them in 1991, waving goodbye to the old world for a 2-year mission inside their new one. They would breathe air recycled by the plants they grew. They would drink water purified by the ecosystems around them. They would eat food harvested from a half-acre farm, all within this closed ecological loop. The system was designed to be a perfect, self-sustaining machine, a testament to our understanding of life itself, a declaration that we were finally ready to become a multiplanetary species. For a time the illusion held. The world watched as a miniature planet came to life. The Biospherians tended their crops, managed their livestock, and studied the intricate dance of their engineered world. It seemed we had captured lightning in a bottle, that we had solved the profound riddle of what makes a world work. But a living planet is not a machine you can simply assemble. It is an ancient, sprawling conversation between rock and water atmosphere and life evolving over billions of years. And inside this glass cathedral, that conversation began to falter. Something was profoundly, terrifyingly wrong. The air started to change. It began as a subtle, creeping exhaustion among the crew, a shortness of breath, a mental fog they couldn't shake. Their carefully calibrated sensors confirmed their fears. The oxygen, the very essence of their survival, was vanishing. Slowly, inexorably, the air inside their paradise was becoming unbreathable. The oxygen levels, which should have held steady around 21%, began a relentless downward plunge, from 21 to 19 to 17%. At 14%, the equivalent of living atop a high mountain peak, human bodies begin to fail. Permanent brain damage becomes a real and present danger. Panic began to set in, not just for the crew but for the scientists outside. They had accounted for everything. They had calculated the respiration of the crew, the animals, the soil. They had measured the photosynthetic output of every leaf. The math was supposed to be perfect. The system was supposed to be in balance. Where was the oxygen going? It was a cosmic mystery unfolding within a bubble of glass. The crew, gasping for air in their own Garden of Eden, became planetary detectives in a desperate search for the thief. They hunted for leaks in the structure but found none. The seal was absolute. The culprit was not outside their world but deep within it. It was hidden in the very foundation of their creation. The lush, fertile soil they had so carefully prepared was too rich, too full of microbial life. These bacteria, in a frenzy of decomposition, were consuming organic matter and respiring furiously. They were breathing in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide far faster than the struggling plants could replenish it. The world inside the glass was exhaling more than it was inhaling. The entire biosphere was slowly, steadily suffocating. But this was only one part of an even more insidious process. The deeper culprit was silent, and it was made of stone. The enormous concrete structures that formed the skeleton of Biosphere 2, the walls and foundations of this artificial world, were curing. And as concrete cures, it chemically reacts with carbon dioxide in the air, trapping it, locking it away as calcium carbonate. This process, invisible and relentless, was starving the plants. With CO2 levels plummeting, the plants couldn't photosynthesize effectively. Their ability to produce oxygen was crippled. The two great lungs of a planet, the soil and the flora, were working against each other in a fatal feedback loop. The microbes were consuming oxygen too quickly, and the concrete was stealing the very resource the plants needed to replace it. It was a cascade failure of stunning complexity, a demonstration of how little we truly understood the delicate, invisible chemistry that keeps our own world alive. We had built a rainforest, but we had not understood its soil. We had planted a forest, but we had forgotten the geology beneath it. We had created a body, but we had failed to give it a functioning metabolism. The dream was collapsing. 17 months into the mission, with oxygen levels at a critical low, the outside world had to intervene. Pure oxygen was pumped into the failing atmosphere. The seal was broken. The experiment in its purest form was over. It was a breathtaking failure, and the problems did not stop with the air. The agricultural system meant to sustain 8 people was in a state of perpetual crisis. The biospherians were constantly hungry, losing significant body weight. Of the 25 small vertebrate species introduced into the biosphere, 19 went extinct. The pollinators died first, meaning many of the flowering plants could no longer reproduce. The miniature ocean was acidifying at an alarming rate. The waterways became choked with algae. The entire system was overrun with crazed, exploding populations of cockroaches and a single species of ant. Biosphere 2 did not become a new Earth. It became a ghost of an ecosystem, a chaotic, unbalanced, and dying world. The lesson was brutal, and it was humbling. We cannot build a planet because we do not yet comprehend one. We are like children who, having taken a watch apart, find we are left with a pile of gears and springs with no idea how to reassemble them to make time tick again. The intricate web of connections, the subtle symphonies of bacteria, the planetary-scale gas exchanges moderated by oceans and rocks, these are the systems that regulate Earth. They are the planet's immune system honed over eons, and we have no blueprint for them. Our most ambitious attempt to replicate this system on a tiny, manageable scale failed catastrophically. Now imagine trying to do it for real, not in a temperate desert with emission control just outside the door, but on the frozen, irradiated plains of Mars, or in the abrasive, airless vacuum of the Moon. Imagine you are not just trying to keep 8 people alive, but to build a true self-sustaining civilization of thousands or millions. The failure of Biosphere 2 wasn't just about oxygen and food. It was a warning. It tells us that survival is only the first, and perhaps the easiest hurdle. The true challenge, the one that places an almost insurmountable wall between us and the stars, is the challenge of independence. How do you build a world from absolutely nothing? On Earth, we are surrounded by a staggering unearned inheritance. 4.5 billion years of geological and biological processing has prepared this planet for us. We did not have to make our own oxygen. We did not have to synthesize our own soil. We did not have to concentrate the planet's mineral wealth. The world did it for us. Think about what it takes to build a single city. The steel for its skyscrapers, the copper for its wires, the silicon for its electronics, the plastics for its interiors. Every single component begins its life somewhere else on the planet as a raw material pulled from the ground. We live at the very end of a colossal globe-spanning industrial chain that is thousands of years old. Now, place yourself on Mars. You have landed with the most advanced technology we can imagine. You have habitats, hydroponic farms, and recycling systems. You can survive, but you are not independent. You are a patient on planetary life support, and the plug stretches 140 million miles back to Earth. Every spare part, every complex tool, every microchip must be packed and shipped from home. To become truly independent, you cannot be a mere inhabitant. You must become a creator. You must rebuild that entire industrial chain from first principles on a world that has no interest in helping you. Let's consider what it would take to make one simple object, a steel wrench. Here on Earth, the process is so routine we never even think about it. We mine iron ore from vast, rich deposits, concentrated by millennia of volcanic and sedimentary activity. We mine coal, the fossilized remains of ancient forests, to create the coke needed to superheat the ore. We build colossal blast furnaces to smelt that ore into iron and then refine it into steel. Now, try this on Mars. First, you must become a geologist. You need to prospect the entire planet, searching for iron ore. Mars has iron. Yes, its surface is rich in iron oxide. That's why it's red. But it lacks the tectonic and hydrological cycles that gather it into the high-grade, easily accessible veins we mine on Earth. You may have to process gargantuan amounts of dust and rock for a pitifully small return. Let's assume you find a workable deposit. Now you need a mine. This requires heavy excavation machinery, tunnel, boring equipment, and explosive charges. Where do you get these? You have to build them. To build them, you need steel. You are caught in a classic, unforgiving catch-22. You need steel to get the tools to mine the iron to make the steel. But let us grant you a miracle. Somehow you have the basic tools to extract the ore. Now you need a blast furnace, a structure capable of withstanding temperatures over 2,000 degrees. This requires advanced refractory bricks and exotic metal alloys. Where do you get those? You have to prospect, mine, and refine the specific elements to create those alloys and manufacture those bricks. Another loop, another dependency. And what will you use for fuel? There is no coal on Mars, no oil, no natural gas, no billion-year-old compressed forests to burn. Your energy must come from solar panels or a nuclear reactor. The sheer amount of power required to run a single blast furnace would demand a solar farm stretching for miles or a dedicated nuclear power plant. And where do the solar panels and the reactor come from? The panels require hyper-pure silicon, boron, phosphorus, and silver. The reactor requires enriched uranium, hafnium, zirconium. Each of these materials demands its own separate, incredibly complex prospecting, mining, and refining infrastructure. To make a single wrench, you must first build a dozen different industries. You have to become a master geologist, miner, chemist, and metallurgist. And this is just for steel. One material. What about copper for electrical wiring, aluminum for lightweight construction, titanium for high-strength components? Each one presents the same monumental recursive challenge. You need an entire planetary-scale industrial base, an ecosystem of manufacturing just to get started. You are not just building a colony. You are attempting to speedrun the entire Bronze Age, Iron Age, and Industrial Revolution all at once in a lethal environment with no biosphere and no easily won resources. It is an undertaking of such staggering fractal complexity that it borders on the impossible. We dream of gleaming Martian cities, but we don't consider the dirty, unglamorous foundations upon which they must be built. The slag heaps, the foundries, the chemical refineries, the tailings, ponds, all the vast, messy and power-hungry infrastructure that we hide away on Earth, but which is the absolute bedrock of civilization. Without it, a colony is nothing more than a campsite. a fragile outpost entirely dependent on care packages from home? And what of the more advanced materials? The digital age is built on silicon. Making a computer chip is one of the most precise and complex manufacturing processes humanity has ever conceived. It requires clean rooms with fewer particles per cubic foot than the empty space between galaxies. It demands dozens of ultra-pure chemicals, gases, and rare earth elements. How do you fabricate a clean room on a planet that is by its very nature a single globe-spanning dust storm? How do you synthesize the hydrofluoric acid or the silane gas needed to etch and deposit layers on a silicon wafer? Proposition is utterly fantastic. You would need to transport an entire semiconductor fabrication plant, along with a century's supply of its chemical precursors across space. Or you would have to build the entire chemical engineering industry from Martian dust to support it. This is the profound dilemma of off-world settlement. True self-sufficiency, true independence, is a fantasy, at least for any foreseeable future. Any colony we establish will be an umbilical tethered to Earth, a fragile industrial beachhead that could be wiped out by a single failed resupply mission. We would be cosmic Robinson Crusoes, except our shipwreck is an entire planet, and the tools we need are not wood and vine but particle accelerators and molecular assemblers. The lessons of biosphere too echo across this vast gulf. We failed to replicate the biological engine of a planet. The task of replicating its geological and industrial engine is 1,000 times more daunting. We take for granted the effortless generosity of our home world, the way it has prepared itself for us, concentrating resources, stabilizing its climate, and creating a forgiving environment for our fumbling technological adolescents. Out there in the silent dark, there is no forgiveness. There is no inheritance. Every atom of material, every watt of energy, every drop of water, and every breath of air must be fought for, processed, and managed with perfect efficiency. A mistake in a closed biological loop leads to suffocation. A mistake in a closed industrial loop leads to a slow grinding halt, a return to the Stone Age but without any stones worth using. The dream of leaving Earth is a powerful one. It speaks to our deepest instincts to explore and to expand. But our attempts to create a pale imitation of our world have shown us the depth of our ignorance, and the cold reality of planetary science has shown us the sheer scale of the industrial chasm we would have to cross. We are not masters of creation. We are the fortunate inhabitants of a single miraculous garden, a garden that not only sustains our bodies but also provides freely all the raw materials for our ambitions. To leave it is to leave behind the very thing that makes us builders at all. It is an attempt to recreate 4 billion years of planetary evolution in a handful of decades. And our first, most honest attempt showed us it cannot be done. Let us imagine for a moment that we have solved it. Let us pretend the lethal energies of the cosmos have been tamed. The hull of our starship is perfect, an impenetrable shield. The life support systems are flawless, a closed loop of Eden. Our engines can carry us across the gulf between worlds. Every conceivable physical menace has been anticipated and countered. The machine, it seems, is ready. But in our brilliant calculations, in our engineering triumphs, we overlooked the most fragile, the most unpredictable component. We forgot about the ghost that haunts the machine, the human mind. We have built a perfect prison, and now we must live in it. Imagine you are there halfway to Mars, 6 months in with another 6 to go, and that is just the journey out. Your entire universe is a collection of sterile metallic chambers. The air you breathe is recycled, carrying the faint, unchanging scent of electronics, filtration systems, and your own weary biology. The light is artificial, a pale imitation of a star it cannot replicate. The sounds are the constant hum and click of machinery, a monotonous symphony that never ever ends. You look to the porthole for solace, for a connection. But Earth is no longer the vibrant, swirling marble of the astronauts. It is now just a star, a particularly bright bluish star, but a star nonetheless. Indistinguishable to the naked eye from 1,000 others, the psychological umbilical cord has been severed. That profound primal connection to the entire human story, to every sunrise, every ocean, every forest you have ever known, is now just a pinpoint of light in an infinite hostile blackness. It is a phenomenon known as the overview effect in reverse, not a feeling of oneness, but one of utter soul-crushing detachment. We have faint signals of this deep psychic danger. They come from the closest analogues we have to deep space travel, from the crews sealed for months inside nuclear submarines prowling the crushing blackness of the deep ocean, from the scientists who winter over in Antarctica, plunged into a months-long polar night, isolated from the world. In these microcosms, we see the blueprint for a breakdown. A condition sometimes called break-off phenomenon emerges. A subtle but persistent feeling of unreality, a dangerous separation from the familiar patterns of life. The human brain is an organ that evolved for variety. It craves novelty, it thrives on changing stimuli. It is wired to the rhythms of Earth, the 24-hour cycle of light and dark, the shifting of seasons, the subtle barometric pressure changes. Our minds are calibrated to the scent of rain on dry earth, the feeling of wind on our skin, the rustle of leaves in a forest. These are not luxuries, they are fundamental inputs. They are the data streams that have shaped our consciousness for hundreds of thousands of years. Take them all away, and the mind begins to malfunction. Cognitive performance degrades. Astronauts on long-duration missions on the International Space Station, who can at least see the Earth, still report a kind of space fog. A mental slowness, difficulty concentrating, memory lapses. Their senses, deprived of familiar richness, begin to dull. Food tastes bland. Their sense of smell diminishes. The world quite literally loses its flavor. This is not merely boredom. It is a form of sensory starvation. Confined with the same few individuals, every personal habit, every minor annoyance is magnified 1,000 times over. The way a crewmate chews their food, a nervous tick, a turn of phrase, these trivialities become sources of immense friction. Psychologists call it the third quarter phenomenon. In long-duration missions midway through the second half, morale plummets, depression spikes, and conflicts erupt. On a 9-month trip to Mars or a years-long interstellar journey, this is not just a dip in team spirit. It is a potential catastrophe. A carefully selected crew of the most stable, most resilient individuals can begin to fracture under this relentless pressure. Imagine a critical system failure when the crew is exhausted, irritable, and psychologically compromised. Paranoia can set in. Trust evaporates. The finely tuned human system required for survival collapses, not from an external threat, but from an internal one. The very minds needed to solve the problem become the problem itself. We are social creatures, yet we are sending ourselves into the most profound solitary confinement ever conceived. We are explorers who depend on a world we are choosing to leave behind. We could try to simulate it, of course. Vast virtual reality rooms projecting images of forests or oceans, sophisticated centimeters releasing the smell of pine or sea salt. But the mind knows. It knows it is a clever forgery. A ghost of a memory, a digital echo of the real thing. It is like trying to satisfy a deep hunger by looking at a picture of food. The simulation might offer a fleeting comfort, but it cannot replace the authentic, chaotic, beautiful reality that our biology is intrinsically, irrevocably tied to. The loss is not just visual, it is existential. But even if we could somehow engineer a human mind capable of withstanding this profound psychological erosion, a deeper and perhaps more terrifying question looms. It is a question that cuts to the very core of our survival as a species. A question so fundamental we have barely begun to whisper its name. Can we even create a future for ourselves out there? Can humanity be born anywhere else but Earth? This is not a matter of sociology or psychology. It is a stark confrontation with the laws of biology. Every single life form on this planet, without exception, is the product of a 4 billion-year-long conversation with Earth. Our DNA is not a blueprint for a generic organism. It is a survival manual written specifically for this world. It is coded with the precise strength of our sun's radiation, the exact chemical composition of our atmosphere, and most critically, the constant, unwavering pull of our planet's gravity. Gravity is not just a force that keeps our feet on the ground. It is a signal, a biological metronome that has dictated the rhythm of life since the very first cell divided. It is the unseen sculptor of our bodies. Our bones and muscles develop their strength in a constant battle against it. Our inner ear, the delicate gyroscope that gives us our sense of balance, is calibrated to its ceaseless downward tug. Our cardiovascular system is a masterpiece of engineering designed to pump blood upwards against its pull to our brains. Every facet of our physiology is an answer to the question of gravity. Now we propose to leave that question behind entirely. The journey is just the beginning of the problem. Consider the first generation of children born on Mars. In a gravity field just 38%, that of Earth's, their bodies would develop in a radically different way. Their bones would lack density, becoming bird-like and brittle. Their hearts would be weaker, unburdened by the need to pump so hard. Their spines, no longer compressed by Earth's full weight, would elongate. They would be a new kind of human, tall, frail, and delicate. They would be Martians, and they would be prisoners of that world forever. A return to Earth would be a death sentence. Their fragile bones would shatter under the crushing force of 1G. Their weakened hearts would fail, unable to supply their brains with blood. The very planet of our origin, our ancestral home, would become a torture chamber they could never survive. We would, in a single generation, create a schism in the human species. Two distinct branches forever separated by the physics of their birth worlds. A family tree with a branch that can never bend back, but this assumes they could even be born at all. The process of human reproduction is a biological symphony of staggering complexity, a delicate dance of hormones, cell division, and genetic timing, all of it fine-tuned to the environment of Earth. We have absolutely no idea what happens to this dance in space. The few experiments we have conducted are troubling. Studies on mice and other organisms in microgravity show alarming disruptions to reproductive health. But a mammal is not a human, and the truth is, for our own species, we are utterly in the dark. Think of the first moments of life. The journey of a fertilized egg, its implantation in the uterine wall, the first critical cell divisions that map out the entire body plan. Does gravity play a role here? Does it provide a crucial up and down that orients this intricate construction process? Perhaps the subtle force is essential for cells to differentiate correctly, to know whether they should become part of the head or the feet. To remove that fundamental cue is to conduct the most dangerous experiment in human history, with a single developing infant as the subject. What of gestation in a zero-gravity or low-gravity environment? A fetus develops its vestibular system, its sense of balance, by moving within the amniotic fluid, constantly referencing gravity's pull. Without it, how does a brain wire itself for spatial awareness? How does a neural network learn to navigate a three-dimensional world when it has never experienced the most basic dimension of all, down? We could be creating a generation with profound neurological deficits, unable to process their surroundings in a coherent way. And then there is the brutal mechanics of birth itself, a process that on Earth relies on gravity to help position the infant and aid the mother through the ordeal. In 0G, it becomes a biohazard, a medical nightmare. Fluids would not flow downwards but would spray in all directions. The infant unmoored would float. The entire procedure, already perilous, would become exponentially more so. We are asking people to perform the most elemental act of creation in an environment that is the very definition of anti-life. Beyond the immediate mechanics of reproduction, there is the insidious, ever-present threat of radiation. On Earth, our magnetic field and atmosphere form a potent shield, protecting our delicate genetic code from cosmic rays and solar particles. In space, even with the best shielding, we can conceive that background radiation is hundreds of times higher. For an adult, this increases the risk of cancer over a lifetime. But for the rapidly dividing cells of an embryo or a fetus, it is a storm of microscopic bullets tearing through its developing DNA. The potential for birth defects, for genetic mutations, is immense. We could see a spike in cancers, developmental disorders, and inherited diseases for which we have no precedent. Each new generation born off Earth would be a genetic gamble. We would be rolling the dice with the future of our species, hoping that our shielding is good enough, that our medical technology can fix what the cosmos breaks. We would be trading the certainty of Earth's cradle for the chaotic uncertainty of a radiation-soaked frontier. And what of evolution? Some argue that humanity will simply adapt, that we will evolve into a new species perfectly suited for life amongst the stars. This displays a profound misunderstanding of what evolution is. Evolution is not a conscious striving towards a goal. It is a brutal, wasteful, and agonizingly slow process. It works through trial and error on a geological timescale. It requires millions of years and countless generations of death. Vast numbers of individuals with unfavorable mutations must perish, so that a tiny few with a beneficial trait might survive to pass it on. This is not a strategy. It is a slaughterhouse. Space will not wait for us to adapt. Its challenges are immediate and absolute. The vacuum will kill you in seconds. A solar flare will kill you in hours. Radiation will kill you over years. Psychological collapse can destroy a mission at any moment. Genetic degradation will corrupt our descendants. The cosmos is a far more efficient executioner than evolution is a savior. To think we can evolve our way out of this predicament is the ultimate form of hubris. We are not creatures of the cosmos. We are creatures of the Earth. Our biology is a love letter to this one specific world. Our minds are tuned to its frequencies. Our very cells carry the memory of its oceans. We are a physical manifestation of this planet's life-giving grace. To believe we can simply uproot ourselves and flourish in the sterile, hostile void is to deny the very essence of who we are. It is to assume that a flower evolved for a sun-drenched meadow could somehow learn to thrive in the frozen darkness of the abyss. So we are faced with a final, chilling realization. The greatest barrier to leaving Earth is not the technology. It is not the distance or the radiation or the cold. The greatest barrier is us, our fragile bodies, our complex minds, our delicate genetics. We are at once the brilliant engineers of the starship and the fatal flaw in its design. We are a species exquisitely adapted for one paradise, and in our ambition we are trying to force ourselves to live in a place we were never meant to be. The ultimate prison is not the ship, it is our own biology. We have journeyed to the edge of imagination. We have stood on the shores of crimson deserts and beneath skies of alien stars. We have weighed the promise of technology against the pitiless void. And now, after all our searching, all our striving, our gaze returns. It returns to the one world we have ever known, because the final, unassailable truth was never hidden in the nebulae. It was not encoded in the light of distant suns. The answer to why humanity will never truly leave this planet is the planet itself. The dream is a powerful intoxicant. a vision of gleaming cities under Martian domes, of humanity's voice echoing in the canyons of Titan, of a species unbound by gravity. It is a story we have told ourselves for generations. A tale of triumph over limitation, of destiny written across the heavens. But it is a story that mistakes the stage for the play. It presumes a home is something that can be merely built. That with enough steel, enough power, enough ingenuity, we can fabricate a paradise from barren dust. This is the grandest fallacy in our cosmic ambition. We are not looking to build a house. We are trying to forge a planet, and we have forgotten what a planet truly is. Consider the first, most intimate force you have ever known. Gravity. Not the crushing gravity of a gas giant or the feather-light touch of an asteroid, but this gravity, Earth's gravity, 1G. It is the metronome to which our bodies have evolved for millions of years. It is the invisible sculptor that shaped our bones, that taught our hearts how to pump, that gave our muscles their strength. Every fiber of your being is a response to this specific, constant embrace. To leave it is to declare war on your own biology. We have seen the effects in our bravest pioneers. Bones that lose their density becoming brittle and ghostly. Hearts that shrink unused to fighting this particular terrestrial pull. Fluids that drift into the skull, creating relentless pressure behind the eyes. Our very sense of balance, our internal architecture comes undone. We imagine spinning cylinders, great wheels in space, generating a facsimile of gravity. But this is a crude counterfeit, a constant dizzying whirl that our inner ears may never truly accept, a brute force solution that fails to replicate the subtle uniform field that permeates every cell of our bodies. To live long-term elsewhere is to commit to becoming a new, frailer species, a creature adapted not to a world but to a machine, and a machine can always break. Then there is the air. We speak of it so casually, this substance we breathe. But Earth's atmosphere is not merely a convenient mixture of gases. It is a multi-layered miracle. It is a shield thicker than any starship hull that vaporizes 1 million meteors a day. It is a planetary lens that scatters blue light, painting the sky that has fueled our art, our poetry, our very sense of the divine. It is a thermal blanket trapping the sun's warmth in a delicate dance that keeps our world from freezing over each night. And it is a pressure vessel of almost unimaginable scale. Right now, you are experiencing 14 pounds of pressure on every square inch of your skin. You feel nothing because you were born to it. Your body pushes back with an equal and opposite force. This pressure is what keeps the water in your cells liquid. It is the invisible container that holds you together. To leave it is to step into a vacuum that wants to boil your blood, or to descend into an alien atmosphere that would crush a submarine. We envision creating an atmosphere under a dome, but have we truly grasped the scale, the sheer volume of nitrogen, of oxygen that we would need to generate and contain leak-proof for centuries? Every single breath taken in an off-world colony would be an act of supreme technological effort. A gasp of air not given freely by a planetary system but manufactured by a reactor scrubbed by filters and monitored by 1,000 sensors. It is the difference between drinking from a river and sipping from an IV drip. One is life, the other is life support. And what of the things we cannot see? The silent guardian of our world. Deep in the planet's core, a dynamo of liquid iron churns, generating a vast invisible magnetic field. The magnetosphere. It is our ghost shield, deflecting a torrent of deadly radiation that screams from the sun, the solar wind. Without it, this stream of charged particles would strip our atmosphere away, boil our oceans, and scour the surface clean of life. Mars had a magnetic field once. It died. And with it, the planet's chance at becoming a living world perished. The red planet is not just a desert, it is a corpse. A world exposed its atmosphere, flayed away over billions of years. How do you build a magnetosphere? How do you engineer a planetary dynamo and wrap it around a fragile colony? The energy requirements are not astronomical, they are geological. You would need to replicate the power of a planet's molten heart. Any settlement we build will be relentlessly bombarded by cosmic rays and solar particles, each one a microscopic bullet tearing through DNA. We can hide. We can live underground in buried habitats, shielded by meters of rock and regolith. But this is not colonization. This is incarceration. A life spent in a bunker, hiding from a universe that is fundamentally hostile to your existence. We would trade the open sky for a subterranean tomb, and then the cradle of all life we know, water. We get excited by the discovery of ice in shadowed craters on the Moon or Mars, and we should. It is a vital resource, but we mistake a resource for a system. Earth does not just have water. Earth is a water world. The hydrological cycle is the planet's circulatory system. The oceans, holding 97% of our water, are the beating heart. They are a heat engine that drives our climate, a repository of dissolved minerals, and the womb from which all life emerged. The sun lifts trillions of tons of water into the atmosphere through evaporation. Winds, another gift of our dynamic atmosphere, carry this moisture across continents. It falls as rain, replenishing the land-carving rivers, feeding the vast underground aquifers. It sustains every plant, every animal, and flows back to the sea. This is not a static pool of ice in a crater. This is a living, breathing, planet-spanning machine for distributing life. To replicate it, you would not just need to find water, you would need to create an ocean. You would need to engineer a global climate system. You would need to build a water cycle from scratch on a dead world. The alternative is a closed loop, a recycling plant. Every drop of water on a Martian colony would be a precious artifact, filtered, purified, and reconsumed in a sterile mechanical cycle. There will be no rainstorms on Mars, no crashing waves on the shores of a lunar sea, no feeling of a cool, misty morning. There will only be the hum of the reclamation unit, a constant reminder of the profound, unbridgeable gulf between a planet that is alive with water and a settlement that is merely hydrated. This brings us to the final, insurmountable barrier, the element that integrates all others into a single, cohesive whole, the biosphere, life itself. We think of it as a collection of things, trees, birds, fish, grasses. But it is not a collection, it is a network. A self-regulating, self-perpetuating system of staggering complexity. The soil beneath your feet is not dirt, it is a universe. A single gram can contain billions of microbes, fungi, and bacteria, each playing a role in cycles we are only just beginning to understand. The nitrogen cycle, the carbon cycle, the phosphorus cycle, these are the biochemical gears that make the planet run. Life does not just exist on Earth, life manages Earth. The oxygen you are breathing was put there by trillions of microorganisms over billions of years. The composition of our atmosphere is actively maintained by the biosphere. It is a planetary immune system, constantly adjusting, reacting, and keeping the world in that delicate, life-sustaining balance. This is what we are truly trying to replicate, not just air and water, but a functioning, integrated ecosystem. We cannot even do this on Earth. Our attempts to create large-scale, closed ecological systems like Biosphere 2 have been humbling failures. Oxygen levels plummeted, pests ran rampant, species went extinct. The intricate dance of life proved too complex to choreograph. And that was here on our own world, with all the ingredients at hand. The hubris of imagining we could pack up a few plant species, a handful of microbes, and a breeding pair of animals and reboot a planetary ecosystem on a sterile rock is breathtaking. We would not be colonists. We would be gardeners in a sterile lab, desperately trying to keep a few potted plants alive while a cosmic desert rages outside. Every nutrient, every mineral, every gram of organic matter would have to be catalogued, recycled, and managed with fanatical precision. There would be no resilience, no deep reservoir of biodiversity to draw upon in a crisis. A single resilient virus, a single strain of mold could cause a collapse. The colony would be a biological house of cards balanced on a pinhead in the middle of a hurricane. And now we must address the ultimate currency of human endeavor, the cost, not just in dollars, which would run into the quadrillions, but in resources, energy, and human focus. The sheer amount of material that would need to be lifted out of Earth's gravity well is staggering. Millions of tons of equipment, supplies, and components. The energy required would dwarf our current global consumption. The raw materials, rare earths, metals, volatiles, would demand a scale of mining on Earth that would leave devastating scars. Building a truly self-sustaining city for a few thousand people on Mars is a project so vast it would consume the total economic and industrial output of our entire civilization for a century. And for what, this is the uncomfortable question we must face. At a time when our own planetary life support system is showing signs of strain, when our climate is destabilizing, when our oceans are ailing, we dream of terraforming another world. Is this dream an inspiration, or is it an escape? A fantasy of a cosmic do-over, a planet B that distracts us from the urgent critical work of saving planet A? The resources required to build one fragile dependent outpost could revitalize vast ecosystems here on Earth. The scientific genius dedicated to creating artificial gravity could be harnessed to solve our energy crisis. The political will needed to fund an exodus could be the very thing that unites us to preserve our shared home. The choice is not merely practical, it is moral. It is a choice about where we place our value, in a fragile replica or in the priceless original. So what does the future of humanity in space truly look like? It will be a future of exploration, of science, of presence. We will have research stations on the moon. We will have scientific outposts on Mars, perhaps even further afield. Brave men and women will live and work there, pushing the frontiers of knowledge. But they will not be colonists. They will be visitors. They will be pioneers on the longest, most dangerous expedition in history, and they will be utterly, completely, and perpetually dependent on Earth. Every complex piece of equipment, from a microchip to a reactor valve, will be designed and fabricated here. Every software update will be beamed from mission control. Every new generation of human beings will require fresh genetic stock from the deep, diverse pool of 8 billion people on this world. They will be connected to their home planet by the longest umbilical cord ever conceived, a lifeline of data supplies and personnel. If that cord is ever severed by disaster or by distance, the outpost dies. It does not become a new, independent branch of civilization. It becomes a tomb. Life inside this gilded cage would be an exercise in constant vigilance. The hum of the life support system is the background music to your entire existence. The daily routine is a checklist of maintenance and repair. A single crack in a window, a single flaw in a seal means instantaneous death. The view of the red desert or the cratered moonscape would not be a vista of freedom. It would be a constant, silent reminder of the lethal environment that is just centimeters away. And the view of Earth, that distant swirling marble of blue and white, would become an object of almost religious veneration, a vision of a paradise that you can see but never again touch, a reminder of everything that was given and everything that has been lost: the wind, the rain, the smell of a forest, the sound of an ocean, the simple, effortless miracle of breathing free air under an open sky. This is the ultimate truth. This is why we will never leave Earth, because leaving was never about building a faster ship or a stronger dome. It was about severing a connection that is woven into our DNA, into our geology, into the very fabric of our being. We are not creatures of Earth. We are Earth. We are a manifestation of its chemistry, a product of its history, an expression of its intricate living soul. Our cells carry the memory of its ancient oceans. Our bones are built from its minerals. Our thoughts are fueled by the oxygen its green things provide. To truly leave Earth would be to leave ourselves behind. Our long journey through the cosmos has not been a search for a new home. It has been a pilgrimage that in the end reveals the sanctity of our origin. We have looked out into the vast, silent, indifferent universe, and in its stark emptiness we have finally seen the impossible, breathtaking, incalculable value of this world. Our future is not in conquering other planets. It is in finally making peace with our own. Our destiny is not written in the stars. It is written here in the soil, in the seas, in the sky of the only home we will ever truly know. We began this journey with a question whispered across generations, a question born of starlight and wonder, of ambition and fear. Can we leave? Can we cast off from this solitary shore and find a new beginning? We have followed the trail of this dream across the solar system. We have pursued it through the phantom light of distant galaxies. And after this long voyage through the darkness, we arrive at an answer that is not found in the cold equations of astrophysics or in the faint radio signals from some undiscovered world. The answer we find was here all along. It was waiting for us in the very fabric of our being, in the rhythm of our own hearts, in the air we have always breathed. The dream of an interstellar exodus is perhaps the most romantic of all our stories, a grand sequel to our terrestrial wanderings, our final migration. But the story we have uncovered is not one of new frontiers. It is a story of an unbreachable wall, a final boundary. The first barrier is one of simple, soul-crushing scale. We speak of light years with a casual familiarity, as if they were just another unit on a map to be traversed. But to truly understand a light year is to understand a form of eternity. It is the distance a photon, the fastest messenger in the universe, travels in one full orbit of our planet around its star. Think of it. Everything you have ever known, every moment of your life, every war and every peace, every king and every peasant, all of it unfolds while that photon is on just 1 year of its journey. Proxima Centauri, our closest stellar neighbor, is over 4 of those years away. Our current technology would take over 75,000 years to reach it. A journey so immense, it renders the human lifespan meaningless. We would not be explorers arriving at a new world. We would be archaeological relics, our descendants ghosts in a machine worshipping a home they never knew and chasing a destination they may never reach. The universe, it seems, has built its shores far, far apart. It has insulated its islands of light with oceans of such profound emptiness that it mocks the very notion of a voyage. The cosmos is not a friendly neighborhood of stars waiting for visitors. It is a vast, silent, and overwhelmingly lonely expanse, and we are adrift in its deepest, most isolated quarter. But even if we could somehow bend the rules of physics, if we could fold space or command wormholes or ride waves of impossible energy, a second, more intimate barrier rises to block the way: ourselves. Our bodies are not the independent, adaptable machines we imagine them to be. They are archives, living libraries of terrestrial knowledge. Every cell in your body is a testament to 4 billion years of evolution on this specific world, under this specific sun, with this specific gravity. You are not merely living on Earth, you are a physical extension of it. The calcium in your bones was forged in the planet's ancient crust. The iron in your blood, which carries the very breath of life, is tuned to an atmosphere with 21% oxygen, no more, no less. Our inner ears, the delicate gyroscopes of our balance, are calibrated to a gravitational pull of 9.8 meters per second squared. Take that away, and our bodies begin to disintegrate. Bones dissolve, muscles atrophy, eyesight falters, the immune system fails. We are creatures of pressure, of density, of a very particular planetary embrace. To leave Earth is to begin a process of biological self-erasure. We are exquisitely, perfectly, and perhaps tragically adapted for this world alone. Our DNA is a scripture written in the language of this planet's chemistry. To ask it to survive on Mars or on a world orbiting Kepler 186f is like asking a deep-sea fish to thrive on a mountain peak. It is not a matter of will or courage or technology. It is a fundamental contradiction of biological law. We are not citizens of the cosmos. We are children of Earth. And we can no more survive indefinitely away from our mother world than a developing fetus can survive outside the womb. Beyond the chasm of distance and the prison of our own biology lies a third great filter, an invisible and relentless storm: radiation. Here on the surface of our world, we live in a sanctuary. We are protected by a planetary miracle, a molten iron core spinning furiously to generate a vast magnetic shield. This invisible force field, the magnetosphere, is our guardian. It deflects a constant hurricane of charged particles from the sun, and it shatters the high-energy cosmic rays, the shrapnel of distant supernovae that whip through the galaxy. We are so accustomed to this peace that we forget the war raging above our heads. Step beyond that shield and you step onto an active battlefield. Every second your body would be pierced by microscopic bullets, particles traveling at nearly the speed of light. They tear through DNA, shredding the delicate code of life. They cause cancers, cataracts, and neurological decay. The Apollo astronauts, protected for a few short days by their metal craft, reported seeing flashes of light even with their eyes closed. Those were not hallucinations. They were cosmic rays ripping through their optic nerves and their retinas, the ghosts of dying stars made visible inside their very skull. To build a starship capable of protecting a crew for centuries would require shielding so massive, so thick with lead or water, that the energy needed to launch it would beg a belief. We would need to build a small moon just to protect a handful of travelers. The universe outside our thin, shimmering veil of atmosphere is not just empty. It is actively, lethally hostile to the chemistry of life. It is a realm of pure, raw, sterilizing energy. Our planet is not just a rock with water on it. It is an ark sailing through a sea of radiation, yet the dream persists, fueled by a constant stream of discovery. Our telescopes peer into the darkness and find a sky full of planets. Thousands of them, billions perhaps in our galaxy alone. Surely we think among that countless multitude there must be another Earth, a refuge waiting for us. This is the siren song of the exoplanet, the great cosmic lottery. But the more we learn, the more we understand, the odds are stacked against us. We find worlds in the habitable zone, the region around a star where liquid water could theoretically exist on a planet's surface. But this label is a profound act of astronomical optimism. A world in that zone could be a Venus with a runaway greenhouse effect that boils lead and crushes probes in its thick, acidic atmosphere. It could be tidally locked, one side perpetually scorched, the other forever frozen with a sliver of twilight between them, racked by continent-sized storms. It could have the right temperature, but no magnetic field to protect it. A naked world scoured clean of any atmosphere, any water, any chance of life. It could be a water world, a global ocean thousands of miles deep with no land, no continents, no shallow chemistry, labs for life to begin. The checklist for a true Earth twin is staggeringly impossibly long. It needs the right mass, the right gravity, a stable circular orbit around a calm, long-lived star. It needs a significant moon to stabilize its axial tilt, preventing wild catastrophic swings in its climate over millennia. It needs plate tectonics to recycle its crust and regulate its carbon cycle. It needs a specific chemical composition, a precise atmospheric blend. It needs a history of just the right number of asteroid impacts, enough to deliver water and organic molecules, but not so many as to cause constant sterilizing extinction events. Each of these factors is a roll of the cosmic dice. To have them all align in one place is not just unlikely, it is the definition of a miracle. We have found no evidence, not a shred of another world like ours. The more planets we find, the more we are confronted not with possibility, but with the unnerving reality of our own cosmic singularity. The silence from the stars is not a puzzle to be solved. It may very well be the natural state of things. So the dream shifts. If we cannot find another Eden, we shall build one. This is the grand ambition of terraforming. The idea that we can take a dead world like Mars and remake it in Earth's image. It is a testament to our species' boundless imagination and our profound hubris. We speak of melting the polar ice caps, releasing carbon dioxide, thickening the atmosphere and warming the planet. We draw up plans to bombard it with asteroids, to seed its soil with microbes. We would become gods breathing life into a planetary corpse. But we fail to grasp the scale of what we are proposing. To give Mars a thick, breathable atmosphere is not like filling a balloon. It would require processing quintillions of tons of rock and ice. The energy required for such a project would dwarf the entire energy consumption of human civilization throughout its whole recorded history. And even if we could do it, Mars has a secret fatal flaw. Its heart is cold. The planet's iron core solidified billions of years ago. Without that spinning molten engine, it has no global magnetic field. So any new atmosphere we might painstakingly create would be immediately and relentlessly stripped away by the solar wind, just as its original atmosphere was. We would be trying to fill a bucket that has no bottom. Terraforming Mars is a task so monumentally difficult, it is orders of magnitude more complex than solving all of our problems here on Earth. It is like a man in a burning house ignoring the fire extinguisher in his hand and instead drawing up blueprints for an entirely new mansion on the moon. It is a fantasy of escape, a way to avoid the hard, necessary work of stewardship in our own home. The brutal, inescapable logic is this: if we possess the godlike power to transform a dead planet into a living one, then we must surely possess the far simpler power to stop destroying the living one we already have. And here in this realization, our journey comes full circle. The story of why we will never leave Earth is not a tragedy. It is not a declaration of failure or a prison sentence. It is a profound and necessary revelation. It is an invitation to finally, after millennia of looking up at the sky, to turn our gaze downwards and inwards. It is a call to action. For if this is our only home, if this fragile blue oasis is our one and only share of the universe's life-giving real estate, then what is our purpose? What becomes the great project of humanity? It is no longer a frantic search for an exit. The greatest adventure is not to find a new world. It is to learn to live wisely and sustainably on this one. Our ultimate mission is not to colonize Mars. It is to achieve a lasting and equitable peace with our own planet's biosphere. This is a challenge far more complex, more noble, and more meaningful than fleeing the consequences of our own mismanagement. To flee is to admit defeat. To stay, to mend, to heal, to integrate, that is the mark of a truly advanced civilization. The future of human endeavor is not extraterrestrial, it is terrestrial. It lies in understanding the impossibly intricate web of life that we are not separate from, but a fundamental part of. It is in the deep oceans which are more alien to us than the surface of the moon. It is in the soil beneath our feet, teeming with a universe of microbial life that underpins our entire existence. It is in our own consciousness, the most complex phenomenon we have yet discovered. This does not mean an end to our cosmic curiosity. Far from it. Our exploration of space must and will continue, but its purpose is forever changed. We no longer look to the stars for an escape route. We look to them for perspective. Every satellite we launch to monitor our changing climate, every probe we send to Venus or Mars to understand planetary evolution, every telescope that captures the light of dying galaxies serves one ultimate, deeply humbling purpose: to better understand and therefore better protect our own world. The James Webb Space Telescope is not a real estate catalogue for new homes. It is a cosmic history book showing us the violent, chaotic universe from which our stable, peaceful world was born. It is the ultimate context, a constant reminder of the miracle we inhabit. We are the universe's way of knowing itself, and our telescopes are the eyes through which it gains that self-awareness. The goal of space exploration is not to abandon Earth. The goal of space exploration is to come home and to know the place for the first time. So let us cast aside the fantasy of escape. Let us silence the siren song of other worlds, and let us turn to the real work at hand, the work of becoming planetary gardeners instead of planetary consumers, of becoming stewards of a legacy 4 billion years in the making. This is our inheritance. Not the silent, empty cosmos, but this single, incandescently beautiful living world. Look at it. This sphere of impossible blue suspended in an infinite black void. This is where the water is. This is where the air is. This is where the warmth is. This is where life in all its chaotic, resilient, glorious diversity exists. From the single-celled organism to the great blue whale, every living thing is a cousin, a distant relative, sharing a common ancestor in the planet's primordial seas. This is not a backdrop for our lives. It is our extended body. The Amazon is not a collection of trees. It is a lung of the planet. The ocean currents are not just moving water. They are a global circulatory system distributing heat and life around the globe. The thin layer of topsoil covering the continents is a fragile living skin which took eons to form, and upon which our entire civilization depends. We are not masters of this system. We are a thinking, feeling, and dangerously powerful component within it. We are the planet's nascent consciousness, and we are standing at a crossroads. The choice is not between staying on Earth or leaving for Mars. The choice is between maturity and oblivion, between accepting our responsibility as custodians of this miracle or continuing down a path of reckless consumption that will make this Earth as uninhabitable as any other world we have discovered. The final frontier is not space. The final frontier is wisdom. It is the challenge of weaving our technology, our societies, and our dreams into the living fabric of this planet without tearing it apart. The great adventure is building a civilization that can last for millennia, a civilization worthy of the Eden it was born into. We will never leave Earth because there is nowhere else to go. We will never leave Earth because we are in every conceivable way made of it, for it, and by it. This is not a limitation. It is our greatest strength. It is our identity. It is our home. And our most vital, most sacred and only mission is to cherish it,